Yeah, you can watch it on France 24. Hello and welcome to London for this special edition of Health. This week, let's talk about sex. Sex is everywhere in society. These traditional telephone booths in London are now mainly used by call girls. So what's it like to live in a society so obsessed with sex when you really don't have any interest in it? Well, you've heard of homosexuals, heterosexuals, but what about asexuals? These are people who have no sexual desire whatsoever, and while they may like to construct meaningful close relationships, the omnipresence of sex in our society leaves them cold. And from those who have no interest in sex, we'll be meeting men and women whose sexual identity wasn't always clear. They are intersex, meaning that at birth their bodies are not exclusively male or female. It's estimated that 1 in every 100 of us has no interest in sex, and yet it would appear our world is obsessed. It's on the front of our magazines, books, and the plot to many a film. So what's it like to live in such a society when you have no interest in it? Well, we're going to meet a couple of asexuals in London to find out a bit more and shed some light on this still relatively unknown term.
At 22 years of age, Melanie is about to start her master's degree in English Heritage Studies. This young lady knows where she's going in life and who she is, part of which is asexual.
Made sense, I thought maybe, I was scared of sex or that my libido wasn't working. I thought all these things, but none of it made sense. It was I'm sure I wasn't repulsed by sex, I just wasn't interested in it. And then when I heard it's homosexual and that, they don't enjoy sex because they're not attracted to anyone, it was oh, well, it makes sense now.
After 2 long-term sexual relationships in which she says sex held no attraction, Melanie likes to share her discovery of asexuality. Posting blogs on YouTube and Facebook, she adds to other resources like asexuality.org, a website that brings a lot of asexuals together. It's where Melanie first met fellow asexual Joshua.
Before I had discovered asexuality on the website, I had no social life, I had very few friends, and I found I had many, many difficulties which I could not share with other people.
These asexuals point out that just because they aren't interested in sex doesn't mean they don't want to form relationships. Melanie has an asexual boyfriend, finding a fellow asexual making all the difference.
We can share, we can be physically intimate and not have this fear in the back of our minds that the other will want more.
And while there are those who choose to be asexual and are content with living without sex, therapists point out that over 90% of people who want to be sexual but don't have a sex drive can find a solution.
If they want it, there's no reason why they can't have it, because human beings are, at the end of the day, sexual beings. So there may be something that's getting in the way of them being in touch with those feelings. Sometimes people cut off emotions and separate it from logic.
But talking about your sexuality isn't easy. In Reading, Mark remembers the years he spent trying to fit into society's expectations. He tried relationships with women and then with men, but neither were right for him.
Other people want sex and I can't provide it, so I thought, right, what else has life got to offer? And then just sort of gave up on that idea.
It was only when he heard the term asexuality that Mark started to feel that despite his lack of interest in sex, he was normal.
Early on, I would have been quite interested to sort of find out if there was anything wrong with me. But so now I've got to the point of sort of coping with adapting to my lifestyle and then sort of realising that I'm certainly not the only one. Plus the sort of feeling that it is something I've always been like. It's just something inherent, this is just the way I am. It's the same as a homosexual person is homosexual, they're born like that.
Today, rather than feeling isolated by his asexuality, Mark has become the media man for the asexual community in the UK. Working on getting the term known, he's also taken part in the Gay Pride March, saying that it's time for a pride to hit the streets. Well, staying on a sex theme, we're going to turn to a very different issue now. It's intersex. That's people who are born with both male and female characteristics.
We're about to meet Sylviane. She was raised as a boy but developed into being a woman. She says she's never had an intimate relationship because society just isn't ready to accept intersex people.
Before becoming a woman in 2004, Sylvaine was a man called Sylvain for more than 40 years. In order to be a man, she received male hormonal injections throughout her adolescence. It's still a painful memory.
I don't regret that time when my life was stolen from me.
For a long time, Sylvaine suffered in silence as her femininity tried to emerge. But one day, she could no longer deny it.
Suddenly, when I was 32, I had my period for the first time, and yet I was a man. It was difficult for me to accept that. I rejected it for nearly 10 years. I went to see gynecologists to try and stop the periods. I had no life. I just stayed at home. Society's not ready to accept us.
200 babies a year are born with this genital ambiguity or intersex. In embryonic stages, the fetus has an undetermined sex. It's only after 5 weeks that it becomes a boy or a girl. Sometimes, for genetic reasons, the baby is born with incomplete sexual organs.
They have a genital bud. You can't tell if it's a clitoris or a penis. They have genital rolls of fat. You can't tell if it's a labia majora or a scrotum that hasn't fully developed. Anatomically from the outside, you can't say if it's a boy or a girl.
But some parents can't bear not knowing the sex of their child.
Parents who see a daughter with a penis or a boy without one ask for an operation. But parents can't decide everything for their child. We doctors have to tell them that we must not operate immediately because we don't know how the situation will evolve.
Progress made in the genetics field mean doctors can now determine more precisely the sex of babies. Operations on babies haven't totally disappeared, but there are fewer of them now than 30 years ago.
Well, finally, before we leave London and head back to Paris, here's something strange but true. Obese women are said to have 4 times as many unplanned pregnancies as their healthy weight counterparts. What's more, obese men are more likely to have STDs even if they have fewer partners. That's the news released by French and British scientists this week, who found that obese women were less likely to use the pill or ask for other contraceptive advice. The study is the first to look at the impact of being overweight on sexual activity. Well, that's where we're going to have to leave you for this week. A big thanks to everyone who worked on the show, notably the man on the other side of this camera, James André. Thanks also to young Jim and to you at home for having joined us. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you again next time.